Jaguar, it is one of the world's oldest and most traditional luxury car brands. Except this car is the least traditional Jaguar ever. In some ways, you can thank Tesla for this car. The American electric vehicle brand has pushed the regular traditional car makers into fast-tracking their vehicles powered by electricity. The first thing you notice with the I-Pace is the change in the traditional proportions and so on. Jags have typically had big long bonnets and big engines stuffed underneath them. This one's got a really short bonnet. It's a surprisingly small vehicle outside. Get inside and there's still acres of space. You've got heaps of room here for 4, possibly 5 people. Decent storage, including a really deep center console there. Decent sized boot. It's a spacious thing. Now, a lot of that comes down to the packaging, what you got to fit in. You've got 2 electric motors, one at either end. Then you've got the battery pack. It's a massive unit, 600 kilograms of batteries. They're sitting under the floor, nice and low in the body, so that's really important. This car has a super low center of gravity. So the advantage there, obviously SUVs sit up a bit higher. When you do tip into a corner, you don't get anything like the roly-poly that you'd normally get in a vehicle like this. It sits surprisingly flat. So it is fairly agile. And you get that sporty flavour that I guess is expected of a Jaguar. Jaguar's gone to massive lengths to make sure that this car still has that Jaguar flavour, albeit done a little bit differently. The car I'm driving now is one of the first edition ones. It's got pretty much every option thrown at it. So you've got air suspension, 22-inch wheels, they're huge. We've got a huge panoramic sunroof and of course all the bits and bobs inside. Typically really low profile tyres like this and big wheels, they're not particularly comfortable, but Jaguar's worked really hard to get some compliance into it, so it does actually ride really nicely. There's a suppleness there, but at the same time, it's got that sporty flavour. You do pick up some of the jiggles over some of the smaller bumps, but not as many as you'd expect in a car riding on tyres like this. When you start to push it though, you can feel those tyres really working hard. That's probably not surprising, it's physics at work. You've got a fair bit of weight and the car's got a lot of mechanical grip, so it's trying to hang on in the corners, but ultimately the rubber's got a limit. One of the big things Jaguar's done with the I-Pace is try to make it as normal as possible. So they've given it that big battery pack, which gives it a theoretical driving range of 480 kilometres, so roughly what your average petrol-powered car would get. That said, we're looking at probably more like 300, 350 Ks out of this charge, but we're doing a fair bit of high-speed freeways and stuff, which aren't particularly kind on an electric motor. The numbers tell the story. Even though it's heavy at around 2.1 tonnes, there's a decent 294 kilowatts of power, and it's backed up by a hefty 696 newton metres of torque. They're the sort of numbers you'd normally associate with a V8. In terms of performance, there's absolutely no issue. I'll show you what I mean. If we come to a stop here and floor it, and it's got instant pickup and just keeps ploughing all the way to 100 k's an hour. So 0 to 100 takes 4.8 seconds according to Jaguar, so it's not a slow car, anything but it requires a different driving style. You get that instant torque hit, so as soon as you hit the accelerator, you're off. So you don't want to be in the middle of a corner and unleash that full 696 newton meters. You're going to end up pushing the limits of adhesion. Jaguar's also engineered some interesting artificial sound on this car. Fairly silent when you're driving it in normal or comfort mode, but you dial up dynamic and suddenly you've got this cool sort of futuristic whooshing sound. It's pretty good. Now, of course, one of the big issues with electric cars is so-called range anxiety, and it is so real. You get in one and you start to wonder when the next charge will be and will you make it. Jaguar's tried to take a little bit of that away with some tricky software to, I guess, predict how far you'll make it. So pop your destination into the nav and it'll take into account everything. The temperature on the day, the traffic, how many hills are en route, your driving style even. So it looks at all these different factors and then tries to work out not only how far you'll make it, but when your next charge is, where you can charge and all those sorts of things. So it's some pretty tricky stuff. The I-Pace is a lot more than just an electric motor. There's some really thoughtful technology inside. And the futuristic thinking isn't just below the skin either. You get inside and the screens everywhere, from the instrument cluster, which is fully digital, to the 2 high-definition screens here that can be programmed depending on what you want to use most. So it's a really nice blend of tradition, I guess, with the stitched leather and so on, and some technology thrown in. There are dozens of apps, including one that can interact with your smart home, turning lights and heating on before you step in the door, for example. The I-Pace also uses artificial intelligence to learn your preferences on everything from your seating position to what music you listen to, even places you commonly visit. One of the big issues with electric cars and hybrid vehicles is the price. Sure, it's great that you don't ever have to go to a petrol station again, but at the same time, people don't necessarily want to pay a massive premium to get in there. With this car, you are going to pay a premium. It starts at about $120,000. So if you look at, I guess, rival vehicles with similar performance, features, size, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars more. So that will certainly be a limiting factor. But hey, the luxury market is about fashion. It's about pushing the boundaries, technology, innovation, and the I-Pace delivers on that front. So there will be people out there who are going to be prepared to pay that premium. While Jaguars are more about on-road performance than bush bashing, the luxury marque is channeling some of the off-road nous it's gleaned from its sister brand Land Rover, ensuring the I-Pace can rumble over something more challenging than most soft roaders. At the other end of the spectrum, that low centre of gravity and those low-profile tyres mean the I-Pace can also stand up to some punishment on a racetrack. Having all-wheel drive and a heap of torque mean it punches really hard out of corners. But the faster you go, the more you notice that those electric motors are running out of puff. So anything above about 150 k's an hour starts to slow things down a little. So the I-Pace is a very, very different Jaguar, a potential game changer for the brand, and it's at the forefront of the electric revolution that we're going to see over the next decade or so. It does come at a price though, and that price premium ultimately is going to limit its appeal, but wow, there is plenty to like about this car.